Most people grow up believing that the only way to prove their worth is to show their strength openly. They've been told to confront, to argue, to make their voice louder than everyone else's voice, to push back harder each time someone challenges them. It sounds heroic. It sounds like the way strong people should behave. But if that were truly the way to win, then the loudest and most combative people would be the ones sitting at the top of every hierarchy. They aren't. The people who seem to glide past obstacles without breaking a sweat, who somehow get what they want while others exhaust themselves fighting, aren't doing it by being louder. They're doing it by something else entirely, something quieter, something that almost feels invisible until you look closely. You have been trained to believe that conflict is where power lives. You have been taught that the person who stands their ground and swings back is the person who commands respect. Yet every time you swing, you're stepping into a trap you don't see. The real power is not in the punch you throw, but in the space you control before the punch ever happens. Machiavelli, writing 500 years ago, saw what most people still don't: that the strongest victories happen without open combat. He described how a leader could shape events so thoroughly that opposition collapses under its own weight. This isn't about manipulation in the cartoonish sense. It's about understanding human nature so deeply that you stop fighting battles on other people's terms. Think about the people who always seem to win in your own life. They're not constantly arguing or trying to prove themselves. They aren't chasing every slight or every insult. Instead, they're calm, deliberate, unshaken, and for some reason, everyone else adjusts around them. They don't need to raise their voices or make threats. They've built an invisible field around themselves, a field of consequence and presence, and it makes fighting unnecessary. That is the shift you're about to learn. You've been trained to swing harder. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand why the real power is in never swinging at all. The first reason people keep losing power is because they rush into the fight the moment someone provokes them. It feels instinctive. Someone challenges you, so you push back. Someone insults you, so you defend yourself. Someone questions your authority, so you argue to prove you're right. But what you're really doing in that moment is stepping onto a battlefield that isn't yours. The other person has chosen the terrain, the timing, and the tone. They know you'll react. They've already planned for it. And once you're in that fight, you're no longer thinking strategically. You're just reacting, which means you're predictable. Fighting on someone else's terms drains your energy. It locks you into their frame. It broadcasts your insecurities to everyone watching. You might win the argument in the moment, but you've lost the war you didn't know you were in. People start to see you as easy to provoke, easy to read, easy to manipulate. Your emotions become a lever they can pull whenever they want. This is why so many bright, capable people never rise beyond a certain level. They confuse visible conflict with power, and they spend their lives exhausting themselves in battles that only weaken them. When you jump into open conflict, you also hand over your image. In one heated exchange, you can destroy the aura of composure it took you years to build. You reveal what gets under your skin. You show people which buttons to push. You train them, without realizing it, how to control you. Machiavelli warned that appearances matter more than reality. He understood that in politics and in life, the one who looks steady is seen as strong, and the one who looks rattled is seen as weak, even if they're technically winning the debate. Every time you get pulled into open conflict, you're choosing to look rattled. The uncomfortable truth is that your need to win face-to-face is exactly what makes you lose behind the scenes. Because the real contest isn't about who shouts the last word. It's about who controls the field on which the words are spoken. And if someone can pull you into a fight at will, They're already controlling you. Now we reach the pivot point. Machiavelli's real insight wasn't be ruthless or be feared, in the way popular culture likes to quote him. His real insight was that power comes from shaping the conditions of a situation long before anyone notices. It's indirect power. It's the power of someone who doesn't push you back, but makes sure you never step forward in the first place. It's not about domination in the moment. It's about designing the moment so domination isn't necessary. Indirect power is invisible to most people because they're looking for obvious signs of control. They're waiting to see someone slam a fist on a table or issue a command. But the person who truly understands indirect power shapes the flow of information, the access to resources, and the perception of what's happening. They make it so that by the time someone thinks they're opposing you, they're actually walking into a situation you've already prepared. They're already boxed in by rules they don't even realize you wrote. That's what it means to defeat without fighting. Think of it like a chess player who doesn't try to attack your king directly. Instead, they slowly close off your moves one by one until you have no choice but to surrender. From the outside, it doesn't look dramatic. There's no shouting, no swinging, no big show of force. But the result is complete control. This is what Machiavelli admired and what most people miss. The strongest victories are quiet. The other side often doesn't even realize they've lost until it's too late to recover. This principle can be applied to everyday life. In business, instead of arguing with a competitor, you control the supply chain or the narrative until they're irrelevant. In relationships, instead of trying to prove your worth, you set such clear boundaries and values that manipulative people remove themselves. In politics, instead of silencing critics directly, you structure the incentives so their criticism works in your favor. These are all forms of indirect power. They don't feel like fighting, but they achieve what fighting can't. A win that doesn't cost you your composure or your reputation. Every single interaction you have, whether it's a conversation with a coworker, a negotiation with a client, or a disagreement with a partner, is also a quiet contest over control. Control of the narrative, control of time, control of attention. This contest isn't always obvious. It's subtle, often hidden beneath smiles, polite words, or casual gestures. But it's there, and the person who understands it always has an advantage over the person who doesn't. Machiavelli knew that appearances could be engineered and that by shaping appearances, you shape behavior. Most people never realize this, which is why they're constantly on the defensive, constantly reacting to what others are doing instead of steering events themselves. When you react emotionally to someone's provocation, you surrender control. In that moment, they've managed to steer your behavior with nothing more than a word or a glance. They know exactly what you'll do and how you'll do it. They've mapped your buttons, and now they can push them whenever they want. But when you stay calm, when you refuse the bait, when you don't give them the emotional outburst they're expecting, you hold the power. They're forced to guess. They're forced to adjust. They're forced to play on your terms instead of theirs. This isn't cold detachment for its own sake. It's a practical strategy. It's the difference between being the piece on the board and being the player moving the pieces. Learning to control yourself in this way is difficult because everything in our culture trains you to perform for approval. You're taught to explain yourself, to justify your decisions, to make sure everyone feels comfortable. But each time you do that, you give away a little more of your leverage. You signal that your self-worth is up for negotiation. The person who stays calm and deliberate, by contrast, signals that nothing they value depends on outside validation. This doesn't make them cold or heartless. It makes them free. And freedom is what gives you power over outcomes. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are. The more you internalize this truth, the more you understand that you don't have to show your entire hand. You don't have to broadcast your emotions or your plans. The less predictable you are, the more powerful you become. People can't manipulate what they can't anticipate. They can't counter what they can't see. This is why controlling your reactions is so much more than a matter of etiquette. It's the foundation of control itself. Real leverage does not come from shouting, threatening, or retaliating in public. Real leverage comes from patience and from invisible consequences. It's tempting to respond to a slight right away. It feels satisfying to let someone know they've crossed a line. But each time you explode or rush to punish, you give away your advantage. You reveal your timetable. You show them exactly where the edge of your tolerance lies. And worst of all, you teach them how to manage you, how to provoke you, how to draw you into a cycle of action and reaction. The more effective path is quiet consequence. When someone crosses you, you don't need to announce your response. You don't need to create a scene. You let them feel the cost in ways that are obvious to them but invisible to everyone else. They lose access to you. They lose your support. They lose opportunities they took for granted. You create a vacuum where your help used to be, and you let them connect the dots themselves. This is far more powerful than public retaliation because it builds a reputation that travels faster than words. People start policing themselves around you because they sense, even if they can't articulate it, that disrespect has a price. This is not about cruelty. It's about making sure that your time, energy, and presence are treated as valuable. When others realize that bad behavior costs them something, they adjust without being told. They begin to see you as someone whose boundaries mean something. And as soon as that happens, your interactions shift. You no longer have to fight for respect. Respect arrives in advance because you've created an environment where disrespect is expensive. This quiet approach also preserves your composure. By not reacting publicly, you keep your image intact. You remain calm, steady, unprovoked. Outsiders see someone who never gets flustered, never needs to lash out, never looks desperate to prove a point. That aura of control becomes self-reinforcing. Each time you handle a situation this way, you strengthen the field around you. People sense it. They adjust their behavior long before any conflict can happen. That is the essence of defeating without fighting. The most advanced step in Machiavelli's way isn't crushing an opponent, it's transforming that opponent into something useful. Anyone can throw a punch or cut off an enemy. Very few people can take the person who once opposed them and turn that energy into something that works for them. But that is exactly what Machiavelli understood about human nature. That most people aren't purely your enemy. They have needs, weaknesses, ambitions, and blind spots. If you understand those things better than they do, you can guide their behavior without them realizing it. Instead of meeting resistance head-on, you learn to study it. What does this person really want? What makes them afraid? Where are they overconfident? Where are they dependent? Every opponent has cracks in their armor. Most of the time, they don't even see them. By paying attention to these patterns, you can offer small favors, bits of information, or opportunities at exactly the right moment. Done correctly, these gestures don't just soften them. They make them quietly dependent on you. They begin to come to you for what they need. And once they do, you're no longer fighting them, you're directing them. This is not the kind of manipulation people imagine in movies. It's subtle. It's slow. It's built on patience and observation. You don't force your opponent to change sides. You create a situation where changing sides benefits them more than resisting you. You don't humiliate them. You give them a path to dignity that still serves your goals. Over time, they can become your advocate without even realizing how it happened. You've taken the raw material of opposition and reshaped it into an asset. Think about how powerful this is compared to simple retaliation. Retaliation drains you and often strengthens your enemy's resolve. Transformation builds your power base. It turns your former critics into carriers of your message. It expands your influence without a fight. When people see that crossing you doesn't lead to public warfare, but to quiet consequences and potential cooperation, they start thinking twice before choosing open opposition. Many of them will preemptively align with you just to avoid the uncertainty. That's not an accident. That's strategy. All of these tactics, control, patience, indirect power, transforming opponents, work best when they sit inside a larger frame, the persona you project to the world. This isn't about acting or pretending to be something you're not. It's about deciding, very deliberately, what signals you send. People test what feels weak, and they avoid what feels immovable. If your signals are inconsistent, if you act firm one moment and needy the next, people will keep testing. But if your signals are steady, calm voice, clear boundaries, consistent follow-through, you become hard to challenge. Building this persona starts with how you handle yourself. The way you walk into a room, the way you speak, the way you make decisions, even the way you pause before you answer a question. All of these things are read by others instantly. They tell people whether you're someone to push or someone to respect. Most people think respect is earned only through titles, money, or achievements. Machiavelli knew better. He knew respect is often given to the person who seems utterly self-possessed, who never looks desperate for approval, who treats their time and energy as valuable. When you make yourself immovable through calm confidence and firm consequences, you deter conflict before it starts. People stop seeing you as a potential opponent and start seeing you as a fixed point they have to move around. This isn't about intimidation. It's about reliability. You become the person whose behavior is so steady that others adjust theirs without being asked. They lower their voices. They think twice before interrupting. They weigh their words more carefully. They do all of this not because you threaten them, but because you've created a presence that quietly demands it. This kind of persona doesn't happen overnight. It's built by hundreds of small choices. Not reacting to bait, following through on boundaries, refusing to explain yourself unnecessarily, staying consistent when others would break. Each time you do this, you're laying another brick in the structure of your authority. Over time, that structure becomes unshakable. People sense it before you speak. They feel it in your presence. And because of it, you rarely have to fight at all. Up until now, everything has been about tactics, how you hold yourself, how you handle opponents, how you shape perception. But there is a deeper pivot that Machiavelli invites you to make, and it sits beneath all of those techniques. It is the moment where you stop chasing approval and start embodying authority. Most people, even ambitious people, spend their lives trying to be liked. They believe that if they are likable enough, support will come, allies will form, and power will follow. But likability and power are not the same thing. The more you contort yourself to be liked, the more you signal that you can be bent, delayed, or manipulated. Authority grows out of something different. It grows from self-possession. It's the steady signal that you do not need other people's permission to act, that you are guided by principles and objectives rather than by applause. This does not make you cruel or cold. In fact, it can make you more generous and more consistent, because your generosity is no longer a tactic to gain favor. It becomes a deliberate choice rooted in strength. People feel the difference immediately. A person who wants to be liked gives gifts to curry favor. A person who stands in authority gives gifts because they can, and because they've already decided it serves their plan. The shift away from approval is subtle. It happens in small moments. You choose not to justify yourself when challenged. You stop apologizing for things you're not sorry about. You allow silence to sit after a disagreement instead of rushing to smooth it over. At first, this feels uncomfortable because you've been trained to fill that silence with reassurance. But with each repetition, your nervous system recalibrates. You realize that people's disapproval doesn't break you. Their discomfort doesn't harm you. Their attempts to test you don't shake your center. And when they see that, they begin to treat you differently. Authority is magnetic. It draws people because it's rare. In a world of constant approval seeking, a person who moves from an inner compass stands out like a lighthouse. Others may not always agree with you, but they will adjust around you. They will sense that your choices are not up for negotiation and that your respect cannot be bought with flattery. That is the essence of Machiavellian power. Not manipulation for its own sake, but the calm, deliberate creation of a position so steady and so grounded that most of the noise falls away on its own. When you arrive at this point, all of the earlier tactics stop being tricks and start becoming habits. Indirect power, patience, turning opponents into assets. These are no longer things you do to get an effect. They are simply how you move. You are no longer acting like a strategist. You are living as one. And because of that, you rarely need to force outcomes. People begin to anticipate your standards, shape their offers around your preferences, and seek your approval without you ever asking for it. That is the quiet transformation Machiavelli understood. Authority built from within that radiates outward until the environment bends around it. Everything until now has been leading to this moment. All the ideas about indirect power, about patience, about shaping perception and controlling the field, converge here. The person who understands these principles does not simply win one argument or one encounter. They create a pattern of victory that hardly looks like victory at all, because there is no public clash, no obvious battle, no need to announce triumph. What you build is a life in which the very conditions of conflict tilt toward you before the first word is spoken. This is what Machiavelli glimpsed when he wrote about princes who held their states not through endless war, but through a careful mastery of appearances, alliances, and timing. The strongest presence in the room is not the one who can shout the loudest or strike the hardest, but the one who has already arranged things so that there is nothing left to shout about and nothing left to strike. Invisible victory is not passive. It is not avoidance. It is the deliberate practice of setting terms long before anyone else realizes terms are being set. It is the discipline of letting people reveal themselves while you remain still. The art of turning their momentum into your leverage. The quiet enforcement of consequences that ripple out until disrespect costs more than it is worth. It is the calm self-possession that makes you untouchable, because people cannot find a handle to grab. All of the tactics described earlier, reframing insults, withholding reactions, letting patience do its work, converting opponents into allies, are threads of the same larger weave. Together they form a cloak of invisibility, a field of control that surrounds you, even when you say nothing at all. In practice, this means you start to notice something shifting. Confrontations begin to dry up. People who used to bait you stop trying. Opportunities begin to flow in your direction because you are no longer wasting energy on public fights. Those who might have been enemies start to orbit as if by their own choice, because they sense it is safer and more beneficial to stand near you than against you. This is not an accident. It is the result of quietly taking control of the field instead of throwing yourself into every skirmish. The energy you once spent on defending yourself is now free to be used for building, for planning, for moving your life in the direction you choose. That is why the closing image of this video is not of someone swinging harder, outshouting rivals, or trying to crush an opponent. It is of someone standing so firmly, moving so deliberately, and thinking so far ahead that the fight never comes. The line to remember is simple. Control the field, and the battle disappears. If you can hold that line in your mind, if you can start practicing the small habits that lead to it, you will see what Machiavelli saw. You will stop needing to fight for respect because you will have built a presence that wins before the conflict even begins. This is the quiet power that lasts. This is the invisible victory.